He found her standing by the tracks, eyes closed, as if she was listening to a song only she could hear. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the worn-out rails. This wasn't the first time he had come here. There was something about the quiet of the train tracks that pulled him in, a peace he desperately needed, but today felt different. She stood there, oblivious to the world around her. The gentle breeze played with her hair, framing her face like a halo. He wanted to call out to her to ask if she was lost, but something held him back. It was a strange feeling, this mixture of urgency and restraint. The air was thick with unspoken words. He took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. She was beautiful, though her expression was almost serene. There was a softness to her features, a sadness too, and it tugged at him like a magnet. What brought her here? He could feel the weight of her story, lingering around them like the faint sound of an approaching train. As he watched, he noticed the way her lips moved slightly, as if she were whispering secrets to the sky. He wanted to ask, but fear gripped him again, holding him back. Instead, he listened, watched, and willed the courage to speak. He thought about the last time he had stood by the tracks, how the world had felt so heavy then, too. Life had its way of pushing him down, making it hard to breathe. But here, in this moment, something shifted. He felt connected to her, as if their fears intersected on that narrow line of steel. Maybe they were both searching for a way out. "Hey," he finally said, his voice trembling slightly. She opened her eyes, surprised, and for a brief moment their gazes locked. He saw something in those deep pools, something that echoed his own struggles, as if she too had walked through shadows and emerged searching for light. He asked, taking another cautious step forward. Her gaze shifted, scanning the empty tracks, the horizon. "They say the trains will come when you least expect them," she replied softly, almost dreamily. There was a wistfulness in her voice that made his heart ache. He asked, though he felt as if he already knew the answer. "For change," she sighed, her shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of her unspoken thoughts hanging in the air. For something different. He understood that feeling all too well. Life had become repetitive for him as well, a blind cycle of work, routine, and loneliness. He too had come to these tracks hoping for something to shift in the universe, praying that he would wake up to a life that felt alive again. "Sometimes it feels like everything is just stuck," he said. Her eyes met his again, and he saw flickers of understanding flash across her face. "Exactly," she whispered. The sound of a distant train whistle broke through the silence, sharp and loud. Her eyes widened as if pulled back from a dream. The tension seemed to hang in the air, palpable and alive. She asked, the spark igniting in her voice. He nodded slowly. Yes, the train would arrive soon, a powerful force rushing toward them, reminding them both of the passing of time. He could feel the anticipation building. It was strange how something so ordinary could feel so monumental in that moment. He asked, his breath short with excitement and maybe a hint of fear. She smiled, a small glimmer of hope breaking through the clouds of her sadness. All the time, for a fleeting moment, he imagined the two of them escaping together. They could leave behind their troubles, their fears. They could find a new place where life felt vibrant, where they didn't wake up feeling heavy and burdened. But as quick as this thought fluttered through him, reality crashed back. They were standing still while the world huffed and puffed around them. He asked, intrigued. "Anywhere," she replied, her voice full of longing. "The mountains, the ocean." He felt a pang of longing for those very places, the natural beauty that seemed to promise renewal. She asked, tilting her head slightly, a genuine curiosity shining in her eyes. "Maybe a quiet town away from all the noise," he confessed. "Somewhere I can just listen." "Chaos can be beautiful too," she mused, "but sometimes..." He wanted to say something profound, something that would tie everything together. But all he could think about was how this conversation felt like a life raft in a vast ocean of uncertainty. Here by the tracks, everything felt possible. He didn't want this moment to end. The train whistle blared again, closer now, shaking the ground beneath them. The approaching sound volleyed through his heart, quickening his pulse, but then just as quickly her face fell. She whispered, "Maybe it's okay to be waiting for a while," he said, his voice laced with sincerity. "You're not alone in this." She looked at him, and for a moment he could see the flicker of hope in her eyes again. But it was quickly overshadowed by uncertainty. What if I miss my chance? He wanted to reach out, to grab her hand and pull her to safety. But what if you catch it? The train was coming closer now, its headlights piercing through the dusk. The rumble grew louder, a mighty beast racing toward them with all the weight of the world behind it. Her eyes widened, reflecting the light, shimmering with emotions he couldn't fully understand. Fear, hope, longing, they all danced across her delicate features. She asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Absolutely," he said, feeling the word resonate deep within him. Life is built on chances. Her breathing quickened as the train grew nearer, vibrating with energy, and he watched as she wrestled with her thoughts. He knew the journey to take that leap wouldn't be easy for her, just as it hadn't been for him. But there was beauty in uncertainty, and maybe that was the first step toward healing. "I want to," she said finally, her voice trembling, "but it's scary." "Then you'll learn to rise," he replied, his conviction spilling over. The sound of the train reached a deafening volume, but he didn't care. The world around them faded. It was just the two of them standing by the tracks, bursting with possibilities. He could see it in her eyes, the flicker of a light illuminating a path. The train arrived, its massive form towering before them. it screeched to a halt, and the doors slid open invitingly, a glimpse of the adventure waiting inside. The chaos and uncertainty melted into something beautiful, tangible, exciting. She asked suddenly, breaking the spell. His heart raced. The invitation lay heavy between them. It was a leap of faith. He asked, trying to tease the weight from the moment. "Yeah, a choice," she replied, and a smirk threatened to break through the seriousness of the moment. The train let out a deep, rumbling sound, beckoning them forward. Suddenly, a wave of warmth flooded through him, an impulse that filled the empty spaces he had carried for so long. He stepped toward her as if an unseen force was guiding him. "Let's go," he said, and the words felt right. She beamed, and he could see that glimmer of hope grow brighter. Together, they stepped onto the train. The doors slid shut behind them, sealing away the weight of their pasts. The sound of the engine roaring to life was like a promise, echoing through the metal walls, a call to adventure, a chance at transformation. As the train pulled away from the station, he looked at her, and in that moment they weren't just two lost souls. They were a new story unfolding, a tale of hope and courage, driven by the power that comes from choosing to face the unknown together. And as they glided away from the tracks that had once held them captive, they both felt it, the lightness in their hearts, the thrill of change whispering through the air. Today was not the end, it was a beginning. He found her standing by the tracks, eyes closed, as if daring the world to wake her from a dream. It was a late afternoon, the kind where the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air was heavy, thick with an electric tension that seemed to hum where the abandoned tracks lay. This was no ordinary spot, it was where dreams go to die, or perhaps where new ones are born. As he approached, he noticed the way her hair danced gently in the breeze, framing her face like a wild halo. She was still, as if the wind held her hostage, and something about that stillness drew him in. He was used to the chaos of life, the noise of the city, the constant push and pull of responsibilities, but here everything faded. He could hear only the distant rumble of a train, like a heartbeat echoing through the ground. He called, breaking the silence, unsure if she heard him. The moment felt surreal, almost sacred, as if the universe conspired to bring them together in this strange place. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing a storm of emotions swirling within them: fear, hope, pain, all tangled together like the branches of the old trees bordering the tracks. She asked, her voice soft yet laced with challenge. "I just wanted to see if you were okay," he replied, surprised at the sincerity in his own words. There was something about her that resonated deep within him, and he wanted to know her story. "Just waiting," she said, her gaze flitting back to the approaching horizon as if some phantom train was about to appear. He pressed gently, stepping closer. The air between them crackled with unspoken words and shared fears. "Hope, I guess," she shrugged, but there was a vulnerability in those words that pulled him deeper into her orbit. "Everyone says it comes in waves, you know." He nodded, remembering his own moments of standing still while life surged around him. Times when he felt like he was chasing shadows, when hope felt almost like a distant whisper fading with the setting sun. He offered, his voice steady. Her eyes pierced through him. "Is that what you think?" "No," he admitted, feeling the weight of the truth. "It's not easy." She chuckled softly, but it wasn't a sound of joy, it held a hint of despair. Worth it to do what? To try and fail? The rhythm of her words reminded him of a delicate dance, each step weaving layers of doubt and longing. He felt that gap between them widen as she fought her inner demons, battling cynicism and hope all at once. "I get it," he said, his heart heavy with empathy. "I really do. I've spent so many nights thinking the same way." She raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Life, I guess," he shrugged, feeling exposed. "Lost my job, lost a friend." She questioned, her tone softening. "Yeah," he replied, the weight of those memories crashing down. "One minute you're on top of the world." They shared a moment of silence, the distant sound of a train becoming louder, accentuating the bubble of tension surrounding them. It was as if the train itself was challenging them. "You know, trains don't wait," he said, trying to lighten the mood. Her gaze flickered back to the tracks. "Maybe that's what life is like." "Maybe the trick is to stop waiting," he countered, feeling a flicker of hope himself. "Maybe we have to choose to get on." Her eyes softened with contemplation, a glimmer of something flickering beneath the surface. "Then we wait for the next one," he said, feeling a surge of determination. "But staying here in the dark won't get us anywhere." She considered his words, the tension in her shoulders easing for just a moment. "It's not," he said, leaning closer. The train whistle pierced through the air, and her eyes widened again as if awakening from a reverie. It was close now, the sound vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. She stepped back as if startled, the weight of indecision hanging heavily between them. "I can't just jump on a train," she muttered, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said, sensing how close they were to a turning point. Life is about taking risks, and sometimes we have to embrace the unknown. For the first time, he saw vulnerability etched in her features. "That's okay, scared means you're alive," he said firmly, feeling the crackle of possibility in the air. "You deserve more than just waiting, standing in the shadows." The rumble of the train grew louder, and he could see the flickering lights reflecting in her eyes, illuminating their shared fears. He stepped closer, a small act of bravery in the face of uncertainty. She asked, confusion mixing with curiosity, her defensive walls beginning to crumble. Wherever your train goes, he replied, feeling the excitement build in his chest. The last notes of uncertainty clung in the air as he extended his hand, an invitation to leap into the unknown. With a gasp, she looked out at the approaching train, then back at him. The familiar tumult churned in her eyes. Absolutely, he said, holding his breath. Let's take that leap of faith. A moment passed that felt like an eternity, the train roaring in its approach. The lights flashed, reflecting in her eyes as clarity washed over her. Suddenly, she stepped forward, brushing her hand against his. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper but resolute. In that instant, she seemed to blossom before him, a flower daring to break through concrete. They shared a smile, the bond of two souls merging, each pulling the other closer to bravery. The din of the train washed over them, and with one last shared glance, they leaped together onto the platform. In that moment, a powerful shift occurred. The world around them exploded in colors, the dullness of their past lives fading behind them. The doors opened with a rush of air, and they stepped inside, the warmth and hum of the train enveloping them like a comforting blanket. The train pulled away, leaving the world they knew behind. As it picked up speed, the landscape blurred outside the window, a cascade of rushing colors that mirrored the whirlwind of emotions inside them. They sat side by side, hearts racing, both terrified and exhilarated. She asked, a trace of anxiety creeping back into her voice. "Now we see where this takes us," he said, feeling that dangerous blend of hope and fear. "We take each moment as it comes." Rain surged forward, their laughter mingling with the clatter of the wheels against the tracks. With each passing mile, it felt like they shed old skin's layers of doubt, sadness, and solitude melted away. As the world slipped by in a whirlwind of colors, they couldn't help but glance at each other, grinning like children running toward an adventure. The journey had begun, and the weight of their burdens lifted, replaced by an exhilarating uncertainty. "I can't believe we actually did it," she said, breathless. Together, he added, feeling the reality of connection bloom between them. Her smile brightened as she turned toward the window, watching the landscape transform. "Life has a funny way of surprising us," he replied, feeling the warmth of her presence blending into the rhythm of his own heart. No more waiting, just living, And as the train sped into the horizon, they knew they had chosen the path that led to something greater. The fear of the unknown was still there, but now it was invigorating, a spark igniting a new beginning. Together, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. He found her standing by the tracks, eyes closed, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over everything, but a cool breeze ruffled her hair, carrying the scent of earth and iron. It was a moment that felt almost surreal. What was someone like her doing here, alone with the roaring silence of the abandoned train station? As he approached, he felt his pulse quicken. The way she stood there, so still, so quiet, gave off an air of mystery. Was she waiting for something or someone? The quietness of the tracks, once soothing, now felt heavy with unspoken emotions. "Excuse me," he called out softly, not wanting to startle her. His voice echoed in the emptiness, mingling with the distant sound of rustling leaves. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the fading sunlight. There was something haunting in her gaze, a depth that suggested she had seen and felt too much in her young life. She asked, her voice both fierce and fragile. He ventured, taking a cautious step closer. He could see the tension in her shoulders, a hint of vulnerability that made him want to reach out. "Just waiting," she replied, glancing back toward the tracks stretching into the horizon. He cast a look down the track. The horizon seemed infinite, and he wondered what would arrive. "This track hasn't seen a train in years," he said gently. Her lips tightened into a thin line, and he could see the storm brewing behind her eyes. He felt a pang in his chest at her words. He understood that search for hope, that yearning for something to change. Life had a way of feeling stagnant, like standing in the same place day after day, waiting for something to happen. He had known that feeling all too well. He asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. "Then I'll still be here," she asserted, her voice steady, but he noticed the slight tremble in her hands. In that moment, he saw her strength, and it both inspired and troubled him. But what if there's more out there? Her eyes searched his, the challenge igniting something inside him. She was brave, standing here against all odds, and it made him think about his own life. "I believe there is," he said finally. The wind picked up, sending a chill through the air, and he could feel the weight of their conversation pressing against them. "You don't know what you're asking me to do," she replied, the walls around her heart starting to rise. "To just leave everything behind." "No, it's not," he agreed. He felt the warmth of his words settle like embers in the air. The truth was hard to face, but confronting it together had a way of softening the edges. "I lost everything once," she confessed, her gaze slipping away as if caught in a memory. "I had to leave without looking back." He could see the vulnerability in her eyes, and a part of him resonated with her pain. "I'm sorry," he murmured, realizing just how deep her wounds ran. "I thought I was safe. I thought everything would stay the same," she whispered, her voice heavy with heartbreak. "And then it all fell apart, my family, my home, everything I loved." He felt that familiar ache in his chest. He had lost people, two friends, family, each loss carving out space in his heart that sometimes felt unbearable. But standing still doesn't bring them back, he asked softly, her eyes sparked again, defiant yet frightened. Sometimes I wonder if I deserve to live. Failing doesn't define who we are, he replied, his heart racing. We're defined by what we do after we fall. She seemed to weigh his words, her expression wavering between fear and intrigue. It was as if the walls she had built were starting to crumble just a little. Maybe, she said cautiously. Then let's take it together, he suggested, looking deeply into her uncertain gaze. You don't have to do this alone. The rumble of a distant train broke through the moment, making them both jump. It sounded like a muted promise of what was to come, and he felt an energy surge through him. There's hope out there, he continued, his voice unwavering. For a heartbeat, they stood there together, bonded by pain and possibility, but then doubt clouded her eyes again. That's the risk we take, he said, his words flowing like a tide. But if you stay here, nothing will change. She took a deep breath, tears glistening in her eyes. Yes, I do, he replied earnestly, feeling the weight of his own truth push against his chest. We must leap. The train whistle echoed through the air again, closer now as if it understood their moment. You could see the engines rolling towards them, the headlights cutting through the dusk. It wasn't just a train, it was a symbol of everything waiting to be discovered, everything they could be. Maybe you're right, she said, her voice trembling slightly as she took a step closer to the edge of the platform. Then I'll be there beside you through every storm, he assured her. The sincerity in his voice seemed to pierce through her defenses, and for the first time he saw a flicker of hope cross her face. Until we reach our destination, he said simply, extending his hand out toward her. The moment hung in the air, charged with energy and potential. The roar of the train filled their ears, and she took a step closer, glancing at his outstretched hand as if contemplating all that lay ahead. The world felt vast and wild, and this moment felt like a turning point, an opportunity they couldn't afford to miss. With a deep breath, her hand found his, and he felt warmth igniting between them like wildfire. Okay, she said, her voice steady now. As the train screeched to a stop, they stepped forward together, side by side, hearts racing. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a world of unknown possibilities, and he could feel the weight of their worries begin to lift. They climbed aboard, the air inside charged with a strange mix of excitement and uncertainty. As the train pulled away from the station and moved down the tracks, he felt the earth beneath them shift. I could no longer hear the heavy weight of reluctance holding them back. Looking out the window, they watched the scenery transform, the familiar fading into the unknown. Trees turned into fields, houses into clouds, everything blurring together like a watercolor painting washing over the memories of their past. I didn't think I could do it, she confided, her voice barely above a whisper as they settled into their seats. He turned to her, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. Here we are, he echoed, their journey together unfurling like a scroll of endless possibility. With every mile they traveled, it felt as if they shed old layers, fears, pain, and heartache slipping through their fingers like sand. Together they began to laugh, sharing stories of their past and dreams for the future. I never thought I could feel this way, she admitted, her eyes sparkling with newfound hope. It's like, he looked at her, the light in her expression brightening the dullest of days. You are waking up, he said, his voice full of warmth. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting the world in twilight, they both realized that life is not just about waiting by the tracks, but about daring to leap and experiencing everything that comes next. In that swirling tapestry of colors outside, they saw a reflection of themselves, no longer lost souls by the tracks, but adventurers on a journey of discovery. And as they traveled into the unknown hand in hand, in that moving train filled with possibility, they knew that hope was alive and well, pulsing in their hearts like the rhythm of the wheels on the track. He found her standing by the tracks, eyes closed, as the late afternoon sun poured over the world, bathing everything in golden light. The air felt electric, like the calm before a storm, yet there was a soothing silence around her, a stillness that made time seem suspended. He approached cautiously, his heart racing like a train barreling down the tracks. There was something hauntingly beautiful about the way she stood there, like a statue carved from wishes and dreams. Hey, he called softly, hesitant to disturb her peace. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment he felt as though he'd stepped into another realm. The vulnerability in her gaze cut through him. There was a depth there, a sadness that spoke of battles fought and lost. She asked, her voice barely a whisper, but laced with a hint of challenge. I just wanted to see if you were okay, he replied, taking a tentative step closer. He could see the tension in her shoulders, a cage built from invisible fears. You seem just waiting, she said, glancing away toward the long stretch of tracks shimmering in the afternoon heat. There hasn't been a train here in years, he said. It was a fact, but somehow it felt deeper too, like a metaphor for all the times he had waited for something that never came. Her lips pressed into a thin line and her eyes hardened slightly. He felt a pang in his chest. He understood that yearning. Life often felt like a never-ending loop of waiting, but within that silence he sensed her bravery. He challenged, an ember of hope igniting in his own heart. She asked, her brows furrowing. He pressed, feeling the rhythm of his heart echo in the air between them. She shook her head, a mix of fear and defiance painting her expression. That sounds scary. Falling means you're trying, he insisted, stepping closer, emboldened by her vulnerability. Her gaze flickered, uncertainty warring with curiosity. You don't know what it's like, she said, her voice trembling slightly. He glanced down the tracks, recalling his own moments of despair. I do know. I've faced my own demons, lost friends, lost hope, but standing still gets us nowhere. The blue sky above darkened for a moment as clouds gathered like old memories trying to break through. She asked softly. I thought I could run from my pain, he admitted, his voice lower now, the vulnerability hitting him. But I learned that living in the shadows keeps us trapped. There was a moment of silence between them, heavy yet full of potential. The wind picked up, swirling leaves around their feet, and he could feel the air crackling with something possibility. Connection, you talk a big game, she said, a hint of a smile brimming beneath her uncertainty. No, it's not, he confessed, suddenly feeling the weight of the moment hang in the balance, but nothing worth having ever is. She seemed to ponder those words. Another train whistle echoed in the distance, louder now, shaking the ground beneath them. The sound sliced through the tension like a knife, and her eyes widened. She asked, the fear seeping back in. There's always another chance, he reassured her. The train drew closer, the vibrations reverberating through the ground and into the very core of his being. He could see the headlights piercing through the dusk, illuminating the darkness creeping in around them. Just think about it, he said, his heart racing. You could get on, leave everything behind. She rolled her eyes, a mix of incredulousness and a glimmer of longing shining through. Then take a chance to discover it, he said, stretching out his hand as if he could pull her into his certainty. Or get lost forever, she snapped back, but he could see the fight slipping away from her voice. Her heart was wrestling with her fears, and he wanted to help her win. Then we'll get lost together, he offered, his words hanging in the air, daring her to consider the possibility. The train was almost there now, its mighty engine groaning as it approached, sparks flying like tiny wishes scattered into the air. She looked back down the tracks, and in that instant he saw a candid flash of fear mixed with wonder. She whispered more to herself than to him, but he heard every word, every crack in her armor. You don't have to do it alone, he replied softly. The train screeched to a halt before them, the doors opened with a whoosh that echoed like a sigh of relief. He stepped closer, his heart pounding, taking in the scene, the fading daylight, the darkening sky, the potential of the journey ahead. A flicker of hesitation crossed her features, but there was also something else, an emboldened spirit fighting against the fears. Okay, she said finally, her voice trembling but resolute. Together, he echoed, taking her hand in his, feeling the warmth radiate between them. With one last look at the now distant tracks, she stepped forward, and he felt lighter, giddy with excitement and fear. They boarded the train together, stepping into a world filled with possibility. Inside, the colors shifted as the walls of the train enveloped them, a cocoon of new beginnings, and they found seats across from each other. The other passengers around them faded into the background, as if they were the only two souls on this journey. I can't believe we actually did it, she said, amazed, a hesitant smile breaking through her seriousness. Now we see where this ride takes us, he replied, gazing out the window as the landscape transformed into a blur of colors. Fields turned into hills, trees surrendered to a far-off horizon, and the night began to fall like a gentle shroud, filling the world with mystery. She asked, looking at him, her expression now a mixture of excitement and apprehension. A little, he admitted, feeling the truth in his own words, but more than fear, he felt exhilaration. But I think it's a good kind of scared. As the train roared down the tracks, he could feel her gaze on him, searching for understanding, for reassurance. She asked softly. I do, he answered without hesitation. I believe that if we keep moving, we'll find it. She leaned back in her seat, allowing the weight of his words to settle. Then we'll keep searching, he promised, a smile creeping across his face. The beauty of this journey is that it's never just about the destination. Their laughter mingled with the rhythmic clattering of the train, filling the car with warmth. He felt the bond between them strengthen, roots intertwining around shared fears and dreams. As the train barreled toward the horizon, the sky darkened and the stars began to twinkle above them like scattered diamonds in a velvet sea. For a moment, he allowed himself to dream, to imagine what the future might hold for them and ultimately for himself. He turned to her, curiosity flaring in his chest. Her gaze drifted back to the window, watching the night unfold outside. Somewhere peaceful, she said, her voice quiet. He mused, imagining a serene place devoid of chaos. Smiled at the thought, a flicker of light dancing in her eyes. I can almost hear the water. Exactly, he replied, allowing the vision to wash over them both. That's where we'll go. As the train continued its journey, something began to shift within them. They took turns sharing dreams, piecing together a tapestry of hope woven from threads of vulnerability and courage. And then slowly something miraculous happened. The burdens they had carried began to lift, not entirely, but enough to spark a change. With each mile, they shed layers of self-doubt and fear, opening their hearts to the possibilities ahead. Eventually, the train came to a stop, and they exchanged glances full of shared understanding. This is it, he said, feeling the weight of the moment. As they stepped off the train, they found themselves in a strange town, alive with lights and laughter. The air smelled different, sweet and inviting, filled with the promise of new beginnings. "Wow," she murmured, looking around in awe. "Just like we imagined," he chuckled, his heart racing. They wandered into the night, hand in hand, feeling as if they had stepped into a new world, one filled with potential and excitement. The laughter of strangers danced around them, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. He said, a grin spreading across his face. "It's all about taking that leap." She smiled back, her eyes sparkling with a mix of wonder and excitement. "And I never would have taken a risk without you," he confessed, feeling the weight of his own journey born in that moment of connection. As they walked together through this vibrant town under the starry sky, they both understood that life was no longer about waiting by the tracks. It was about daring to leap, not just into the unknown, but into the warmth of shared dreams, where every moment transformed into an adventure waiting to be discovered. And as they took those first steps forward, nothing could hold them back. They were alive, they were free, and they were ready to face whatever came next together. He found her standing by the tracks, eyes closed, as if she were letting the world swirl around her unhindered and free. The sun was low in the sky, casting an ethereal glow that bathed everything in warm, golden hues. Time seemed to slow down, the world faded into a soft hum, leaving them in an extraordinary silence. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was there for a reason. As he approached, he felt the air shift with unspoken tension. It was a feeling that crept up his spine, an awareness that this moment was important, perhaps even life-changing. "Hey," he called gently, the word hanging in the air like a fragile note. Her eyes snapped open, wide and alert, revealing a universe of questions and uncertainties. She asked, her tone oscillating between curiosity and defensiveness. He inquired, taking a small step closer, as if moving too quickly might startle her back into her own world. "I'm fine," she replied, but the way she hesitated and glanced back at the empty tracks told a different story. "I'm just," he echoed, glancing down the tracks that stretched endlessly into the horizon. "For what?" "Something like that," she said, a flicker of vulnerability slipping through her facade. He felt an echo of her words resonate deep within him. He understood waiting a lifetime of it specifically. Waiting for a better job, waiting for love to arrive, waiting for the tide of life to change. "But this train hasn't come for years," he countered gently, his voice carrying a warmth of shared understanding. She turned her gaze back to the tracks, eyes reflecting a kaleidoscope of emotions, fear, yearning, but most of all, uncertainty. "I've lost everything before," she admitted softly. He considered her words. Loss was an old friend to him too. He could feel the weight of her isolation and the way it wrapped around her like a shroud. "But maybe waiting won't bring you what you want," he pressed gently. She asked, incredulity flashing in her eyes. "Sometimes we stand still, thinking that it's protecting us," he said, his heart thudding in his chest. "I don't know," she replied, crossing her arms tightly over her chest as if warding off the vulnerability that his words invited. "Then you get back up," he said with conviction, feeling the conviction building within him. "Falling doesn't define you." Her eyes narrowed slightly, contemplating his challenge. There was a vulnerability there, a flicker of hope that danced just beneath her skepticism. "You make it sound so easy," she said, but her voice had softened. "No, I don't," he admitted, "but I know what it's like to be lost. I know what it's like to feel like life has spiraled out of control. We can't just stand by waiting for things to happen." A long moment passed between them, charged with raw emotion. The air crackled, palpable with the weight of their intertwined stories. And then, as if something shifted in the very fabric of the universe, a profound noise echoed through the stillness, the distant sound of a train whistle. Both their heads snapped toward the sound, and she gasped, the light of possibility flickering in her eyes. She asked, urgency creeping into her voice. He nodded slowly, feeling the thrill of momentum. "It might be, but you have to decide if you want aboard," she asked, anxiety written all over her face. "Then wait for the next one," he replied with an easy confidence. Life is about chances. The train rumbled closer, and he could feel the vibrations in the wooden planks beneath them. The sound grew louder, raw and visceral, drowning out the doubts that had hung between them just moments before. "You've been waiting long enough." Her breath quickened as she focused on the shadow of the approaching train. He could see the struggle waging war within her, the fight between her heart and her mind. She asked, her voice trembling. "Absolutely," he affirmed, warm determination casting away the last remnants of her fear. "I'll be right here beside you." The train screeched to a halt, and the platform shuddered beneath their feet. The door slid open with a hiss, beckoning with promises of adventure, escape, and hope. With his hand reached out, he felt the warmth of her fingers brushing against his as she stepped closer to the threshold. Just as they were about to board, she paused, caught in the moment. "Then we face it together," he said firmly, his voice an anchor of reassurance amidst the swirling uncertainty. Gazing into her eyes, he could see the flicker of possibility igniting within. In that heartbeat, hope transformed her expression. She took a deep breath, and he sensed a shift of decision solidifying. "Okay," she whispered, determination replacing doubt. As they boarded the train, he felt the warmth of connection wrap around them like a comforting blanket. Together Together they found 2 seats near the window, the world outside a tapestry of deepening shadows and glowing light. With each chug of the engine, the recent past began to dissolve. They exchanged timid smiles, sharing stories, their fears, their dreams, the pathways that had led them to stand together at that very moment. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you by the tracks," she admitted softly, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "Sometimes life throws us together in the strangest places," he replied, a smile dancing on his lips. As the landscape blurred outside, he felt a unique chemistry building between them, a promising exploration of uncharted territory. Passing fields melted into forests, urban structures gave way to darkened skies filled with shimmering stars. She asked, staring out at the mesmerizing view. "I believe so," he answered, feeling conviction guide his words. "Every journey teaches us something new." Her voice quivered with insecurity. "Then we'll learn together," he assured her, not breaking eye contact. "It's all a part of the adventure. The world isn't meant to be predictable." Just then the train jolted slightly, a reminder of the unpredictability they both embraced. A small thrill ran through him as he realized how exhilarating it felt to be on this path with her. He asked, leaning into the moment, excited to unravel more of her mind. "I crave freedom," she said slowly, her voice a whisper of vulnerability. "When you leap," he suggested, suddenly realizing the profound simplicity of her desires. "Yes, when you leap, you break the chains," she breathed, her eyes lighting up at the thought. "Exactly," he said, "and it's never too late to start over." As they continued to talk, walls began to fall. She shared stories of her past, her losses, her mistakes, and he found that the more he listened, the more he felt a bond forming, a thread connecting their hearts with unbreakable strength. "Life has thrown me countless curveballs," she confessed, each word a release, "but standing still felt like it was the only thing I could control." "I know that feeling," he said, recalling nights spent filled with anxiety over decisions he couldn't make. "But safety becomes a prison if we let it chain us down." "That's true," she admitted, a glimmer of understanding lighting her face. "I guess I've used my fears as an excuse to avoid." "Living is messy," he responded, embracing the truth of their exchange, "but it's also beautiful." For the rest of the journey, they talked about everything and nothing, their conversations swirling around dreams and doubts, adventures and mishaps. The world outside transformed into a blur of rolling hills and the vast fabric of night, but inside they found solace in their shared truths. And just like that, he knew they were becoming part of something bigger, a narrative woven from the threads of their experiences. He glanced at her, feeling a sense of connection that coursed through him, an urgency stemming from knowing they were both at a turning point. As the train began to slow down, the ambient noise shifted, and anticipation swelled in the air. They looked out the window and saw the outline of a new station come into view, illuminated by soft lights. She asked, excitement brimming in her tone. He answered, his heart pounding with exhilaration. They grabbed their bags and made their way to the door, adrenaline flowing through their veins. With one last glance at each other, they stepped off the train together, landing on solid ground, a place where possibilities lay before them like an open book waiting to be written. As they took their first steps into this new world, he sensed the potential lingering in the air. He asked, eyes sparkling with eagerness. "Let's explore," she replied, an infectious smile spreading across her face. Hand in hand, they walked into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. The past faded behind them like a shadow, leaving them open to the limitless journey ahead. As the night wrapped around them, reality felt so much lighter. The anticipation to discover new experiences turned their fears into mere stepping stones. They stepped into a place where dreams began to take shape, unshackled by the weight of the past. In that moment, standing side by side, they knew they had changed. No longer lost souls waiting by tracks, they were adventurers finding their way into the light with open hearts, ready to leap. He found her standing by the tracks, eyes closed, as if she were daring the world to move without her. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden hue over the abandoned platform, where weeds crept through the cracks in the wood. There was a stillness all around, almost tangible, and in that moment it felt as though time had paused just for her. He hesitated, taken aback by the sight of her. She seemed to be in a trance, the wind lightly tugging at her hair. The sound of cicadas buzzed in the background, but all he could focus on was the girl standing before him. He felt a pull, something deep inside urging him to approach her. "Hey," he called out, his voice breaking the silence. It reverberated off the rusted beams of the old station, echoing back to him. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing a spark of surprise. She asked, her voice low and slightly defensive. "I was just checking to see if you're okay," he replied, his heart racing. There was a vulnerability in her gaze that struck him, a silent plea hidden in her uncertainty. "Just waiting," she said, her eyes drifting back to the horizon. He pressed, curiosity igniting within him. She let out a soft laugh, bitter yet laced with truth. Maybe an idea, maybe a sign. He nodded, her words resonating within him. He knew what it was like to feel left behind, watching as life continued its relentless march, leaving him in the dust. She scoffed, an edge creeping into her tone. "I don't feel safe, I feel." "Loss makes sense," he assured, feeling the weight of every lost moment he'd ever experienced. But what if there's more out there? She turned to him, a mixture of skepticism and curiosity in her eyes. No, he admitted, but I do know what it's like to be afraid. I've stood still too, waiting for something or someone to change how I felt, but at some point you have to take a leap. You make it sound so easy, she murmured, a flicker of doubt flashing in her gaze. Because it's not easy, he replied, stepping a little closer. Life is messy, but we have to face it. Her eyes narrowed, contemplating his words. Then almost defensively, she crossed her arms, the walls she had built around herself rising once more. Then you try again, he countered, feeling the urgency of the moment like a drumbeat in his chest. The air thickened with tension as she stared into the distance, her mind clearly wrestling with the possibilities. I do, he insisted, recalling nights spent in silent despair, feeling the weight of his own fears pressing down on him. Just then, the distant whistle of a train pierced through the air, a haunting sound that sent chills down his spine. The noise grew louder, cutting through the tension like a sharp knife. It's here, she breathed, her eyes wide. He asked, urgency filling his voice. She replied, a tremor in her voice. Then we'll find the next one, he assured her, sensing the moment slipping away. But if you stay here, you'll never know what could be waiting for you, she whispered, her voice small. Then learn with me, he offered, his heart racing. You don't have to jump alone. As the train rolled to a stop, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Platform rattled, adding weight to the intensity of the moment. The door slid open, beckoning them inside. With shaky breaths, she took half a step forward, her body caught in the battle of desire and doubt. She murmured, fear creeping back into her voice. Then we face it together, he said firmly, extending his hand toward her, an anchor in the whirlwind of change. For a moment their eyes locked, and in those depths he saw reflection. The uncertainty, the fear, mingled with a longing for something more. The sound of the train drumming against the tracks filled the air with energy, urging her to decide. Okay, she said finally, the words tumbling out with a mix of surrender and resolution. Together they stepped onto the train, a shared breath of hope rising through the air as they found their seats. The doors closed behind them with a finality, sealing away the past while filling the cabin with a glow of potential. As the wheels began to turn and the train pulled away from the station, she let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She asked, her eyes darting back and forth in excitement. He echoed, a grin overtaking his face. Now we begin. The landscape outside blurred, and as the train gathered speed, so did the rhythm of their hearts. Fields of golden wheat turned into sprawling forests, and the sun dipped lower, painting the world in hues of pink and orange. This is beautiful, she said, leaning closer to the window. You deserve to feel alive, he replied. In the next hour, they spoke of everything and nothing, weaving stories from their pasts. He spoke of his decaying job and the friendships he lost, while she shared memories of a life that once felt vibrant before it crumbled under the weight of expectation. I always thought I had to have everything sorted out, she admitted, her voice brimming with a mixture of regret and realization. I wanted to control my path. Control can be an illusion, he replied, a flicker of understanding passing between them. The train skated over rails, and their laughter mingled with the sound of the engine, filling the air with warmth. With each passing mile, they peeled away layers of doubt, letting the echoes of their past slip through the cracks. Her expression began to transform, and he could see the flicker of hope ignite within her. She asked, her voice tinged with excitement. I believe we already have, he said, feeling a rush of adrenaline. She smiled, and in that moment he could see the walls crumbling down, revealing a radiant spirit eager to break free from the chains of doubt. Let's make this count, she declared, fire flashing in her eyes. As night fell and stars filled the sky, they leaned into the adventure, savoring the freedom that came with their decision. Each laugh, each shared story was a step toward healing, a moment of rediscovery that pulled them closer together. She asked playfully, though a hint of concern lingered in her voice. Then we'll find our way back, he replied, the conviction settling in his heart. Life is about detours. Just then the train shuddered as it slowed to a stop at a station blanketed in soft light. The sign read New Beginnings, and they exchanged a glance, knowing they had another choice to make. She asked, her excitement written all over her face. Yes, he said, taking her hand. Their hearts raced as they stepped off the train and into the warmth of the platform, their senses alive with anticipation. The air was filled with the fragrant scent of blooming flowers, and laughter echoed in the distance. Moment everything felt possible. Life had shifted, and the children of their pasts had transformed under the weight of their choices. He asked, curious and eager. She exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with joy. Hand in hand, they wandered deeper into the vibrant new world, cradling the promise of adventure. The past faded behind them, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. The shadows evaporated, replaced by a symphony of light and laughter that held the promise of the future. As they ventured into the unknown, he knew they had changed. No longer simply bystanders waiting for a train to arrive, they were living, breathing souls, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Each step was a leap of faith, a testament to their courage, and a reminder that true freedom often lies just beyond the threshold of fear. Together they would face the world as it unfolded, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. They were adventurers diving headfirst into the depths of life, a life filled with unexpected turns, vibrant stories, and endless possibilities waiting to be discovered. He found her standing by the tracks, eyes closed, as if she were waiting for the world to shift and change around her. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the worn planks of the platform. In that quiet moment, the air was thick with anticipation, the kind that made your heart race, like waiting for the first drops of a summer storm. He had been walking for miles, escaping the weight of his own life when he saw her. She stood still, bathed in golden light, completely unaware of the world rushing around her. The sound of distant trains echoed faintly, reminding him that time had not stopped. It only felt that way here on the precipice of the unknown. He called out, his voice cutting through the stillness. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a brief moment surprise flickered across her face. Then she narrowed her eyes, sizing him up as if gauging whether he was a threat or an ally. She asked, her tone defensive. "I just wanted to check if you're all right," he replied, taking a cautious step closer. He could see the tension simmering beneath her calm exterior. "You seem," she scoffed, but he could see a flicker of truth in her eyes. He asked, glancing down the empty tracks that stretched into the distance. "A train," she said, shrugging, but there was an edge to her voice. It reminded him of the weighty silence that often draped over him when he felt the world closing in. "There's not been a train here in years," he stated softly, probing deeper. She hesitated, her expression shifting. "I'm waiting for something to change." He felt a pang of recognition strike him, as if her words pulled at threads of his own struggles. "I understand that," he said, his voice steady. "I've waited too, for opportunities, for love." At this, she turned her gaze away from him, staring down the empty track as if she could see something he couldn't. "Hope can be a cruel joke," she murmured, almost to herself. "Maybe," he conceded, "but isn't it worth taking a step toward it even if it feels scary? Standing still won't change anything." "You talk a big game," she replied, her voice a mixture of disdain and intrigue. "No, I don't," he admitted, his heart racing a bit, "but I do know about fear." For a moment they both stood in silence, letting the weight of their words settle between them. He sensed the barriers around her walls beginning to tremble. "I lost everything," she confessed, finally breaking the silence. "My family, my dreams." He stepped closer, his heart pounding as he felt their shared pain connect them. "But standing here won't bring them back," he said softly. She looked at him, vulnerability passing through her expression. "Strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting up each time you do," he replied, feeling driven to take this moment further. "And if you don't take a chance, you'll always wonder what if." Just as the tension peaked, they both heard it, the unmistakable sound of a train approaching, its whistle piercing the air with urgency. The ground vibrated beneath their feet, and her eyes widened, reflecting the flicker of hope that threatened to bloom. She asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "Yes," he affirmed, feeling pumped with adrenaline. She asked, a hint of fear threading her voice. "Then we'll find another one," he said, his words falling like comforting raindrops on parched ground. The train charged closer now, its headlights cutting through the dusk like a beacon. The whistle echoed around them, drowning out doubts in a cacophony of sound. She shifted nervously, her eyes darting from the train to him, caught in the web of indecision. Her whisper floated in the air, tinged with desperation. "Then wait for the next one, but don't miss this moment," he urged, feeling the urgency building. Taking risks is what gives life its flavor. A moment hung between them, thick with possibility. He could see her contemplating, weighing the heaviness of her past against the bright unknown of the future. Finally, her shoulders relaxed. "Okay," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. He smiled, relief flooding through him. Together they stepped onto the platform, the weight of their choices grounding them firmly in the moment. As they boarded the train, he could feel her warmth beside him, the spark of something electric igniting the space between them. Once they settled into their seats, the train jolted into motion. Outside, the world began to blur into a tapestry of colors, the golden fields, the swaying trees, the fading sun all vanishing behind them with every passing moment. She asked, excitement and apprehension mingling in her voice. "Now we embrace whatever awaits us," he replied, a thrill coursing through him. As they sped into the unknown, he felt a connection growing. They poured out their stories, their dreams, and their fears, crafting a bond from the past that only felt natural. She shared memories that painted pictures of laughter and loss, while he revealed the moments that almost stole his joy. "I always thought I needed to fix everything first," she said, her voice trembling. "But now, start by letting go," he suggested, his voice steady and inviting. "And remember that life doesn't always follow a plan. Sometimes it can be chaotic but filled with beauty." She asked, vulnerability spilling from her lips. "I do," he confessed. "Every twist and turn shapes us." Her smile brightened, breaking through the clouds of doubt hanging over her. "You're so bold," she said, looking at him with a mix of admiration and surprise. "I'm just as scared as you are," he admitted, a chuckle escaping. "But fear isn't a bad companion. It keeps us aware, forces us to grow." Just then the train chugged along, rhythmic and soothing. They began to laugh more freely, the sound lightening the atmosphere around them, weaving in and out of the conversations. With each passing mile, it felt like they were shedding layers of their past selves, unearthing new layers of courage and understanding. The landscapes outside shifted like scenes in a movie, each frame more beautiful than the last. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," she said, her voice a melody woven in excitement. He replied, his heart swelling with joy. As the sun sank lower, casting vibrant orange and pink hues across the sky, they spotted a small town rising in the distance, its twinkling lights beckoning them closer. The familiar thrill of adventure surged through him. She asked, her eyes filled with wonder. He grinned. As they approached the station, the excitement in the air became almost tangible. They took a moment to catch their breath, and he turned to her, feeling the weight of the moment pressing in. "Ready?" she said, her voice steady now, filled with newfound courage. Together, they stepped off the train into the warm embrace of the evening air. The town buzzed with life, laughter spilling from the cozy cafes lining the streets. For the first time in too long, everything felt alive. He asked, his heart racing with the possibilities. "Let's explore," she said, her eyes shining brighter than the stars above. Hand in hand, they delved into the vibrant streets, soaking in the laughter and warmth surrounding them. The sights and sounds wrapped around them like a comforting blanket, sparking whispers of hope and joy. They wandered deeper, enjoying gelato from a small shop, sharing dreams and shaking off the weight of their past. As the evening turned to night, they found themselves sitting on a bench beneath the stars, the air soft and warm. They talked about everything, their passions, their hopes, and the limitless future stretching out in front of them. "I had no idea life could feel like this again," she said quietly, the flicker of a smile resting on her lips. "Neither did I," he replied, feeling chills run down his arms. In that moment, they realized they were not just two strangers who met by chance on a train. They were explorers, adventure seekers, stepping into a new world filled with endless possibilities. He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Whatever lies ahead, we'll face it together," he promised, the conviction ringing true in his voice. "Together," she echoed, her eyes shining with new beginnings. As they sat side by side, the stars above twinkled like distant dreams waiting to be realized. The world felt vast and filled with color, and he knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that this journey had changed them both forever. They had stepped away from the tracks that once confined them, and in doing so had discovered life beyond waiting. Now they were ready to leap into the unknown together, two souls exploring the light, finding beauty in the journey that lay ahead. He found her standing by the tracks, eyes closed, as if she was summoning something from the depths of her soul. The sun was setting, painting the sky with fiery oranges and deep purples, and the tracks stretched endlessly in both directions, disappearing into the horizon. It was a scene that felt both serene and unsettling, as if the world had paused just for her. Walking closer, he noticed a tension in her posture, like a tightly coiled spring ready to snap. The air was thick, almost electric, charged with unspoken words and uncharted possibilities. "Hey," he called out, his voice trembling slightly, hoping to break the spell that held her captive. She opened her eyes slowly, revealing a storm of emotions swirling behind them. She asked, her tone defensive, as if he had interrupted a sacred moment. "I just wanted to see if you were okay," he replied, feeling more vulnerable with each word. "You seem," she echoed, a hint of bitterness lacing her reply. He pressed, drawn into her intensity. The tracks were so empty, so full of nothingness. She turned her gaze back to the tracks, her breath hitching for a moment. "Something like that," she murmured. His heart raced as he realized she wasn't just waiting for a train, she was waiting for life itself to change. "But this track hasn't seen a train in years," he said softly. Her lips twisted in a bitter smile. "That's the thing about waiting." He felt that in his bones. "Sometimes standing still can be just as dangerous as moving forward," he replied, feeling a rush of determination push him closer to her. Her voice shook slightly, her defenses slipping just enough for him to catch a glimpse of vulnerability. "Failing doesn't define you," he said, stepping closer, willing her to see that. "You define yourself by how you get back up." For a moment her eyes searched his face, that faint flicker of hope mingling with fear. She asked, her voice cracking. "Then I'll be here with you," he promised, feeling braver with each passing moment. Just then, a distant whistle sounded, growing louder with each passing second. The vibrations of the approaching train rippled through the ground, pulsing like a heartbeat. She looked out toward the horizon, eyes wide with disbelief and electric excitement flickering in her chest. "It's coming," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. He asked, his heart pounding with the thrill of the moment. She questioned, edging back, the fear creeping in like shadows. "Then we face it together," he replied, extending his hand toward her. The train roared to a halt, smoke billowing, and the doors slid open with a rush. He felt the warmth of her hesitation wrapped in his hand. "This is it," he urged, feeling the weight of what was happening. Her gaze darted between him and the towering locomotive. He could see the internal battle, the struggle between desire and fear. And then, in a heartbeat, he remembered his own moments of standing still, the times he wished for something to change while doing nothing. Taking a deep breath, she stepped closer to the train, her resolve solidifying. "Okay," she said, her voice steadier now. As they stepped aboard, he felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders, like a curtain rising to reveal an unwritten story. The doors slammed shut behind them, sealing away the doubts that had held her captive. Inside, they found two seats next to each other, and as the train jerked into motion, an exhilarating rush washed over him. The old fears began to fade into a blur outside the window, replaced by the promise of something new. She asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "Now we see where this journey takes us," he replied. The train rattled on the tracks, and the landscape outside transformed from open fields to dense forests, each passing scene more beautiful than the last. As they sped through picturesque countryside, laughter bubbled up between them, replacing the weight of silence. "It feels amazing to just be moving," she said, her voice filled with genuine surprise. He agreed, feeling lighter himself. They began to share pieces of their lives, stories of dreams lost and hopes rekindled. Talked about his struggles, the weight of lost friendships, while she recounted the weight of expectations that had felt too heavy to carry. "I always thought I had to wait until everything was perfect," she admitted, her voice growing soft. "But now, exactly," he said, leaning in closer. "Life isn't about waiting for the perfect moment." They stared at each other, a connection building stronger than either could have anticipated. Suddenly, the train lurched to a stop, sending them both forward slightly. The lights flickered, throwing shadows across their faces. She asked, a hint of alarm in her voice. "I don't know," he replied, trying to stay calm, but deep down he could feel his own unease bubbling. The train was eerily silent, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Just then, an announcement crackled over the intercom, static drowning out the words. Panic surged through him as he glanced around. The other passengers looked just as confused. "Stay close," he whispered to her, feeling the tension coil in the air between them. Their shared excitement was now overshadowed by an unsettling unease. She asked, gripping his hand tighter. "I've never experienced anything like this," he admitted, his heart racing. The train doors burst open and a figure stepped inside. The stranger was tall with an intense expression, his eyes scanning the passengers like he was searching for something or someone. The stranger commanded, his voice deep and authoritative, sending chills down their spines. A ripple of fear washed over the cabin, whispers rising like a wave. He turned to her, eyes wide with disbelief. "This isn't good," he murmured, adrenaline coursing through his veins. She whispered, fear etched in her features. "We stay calm," he replied, instinct taking over as he scanned the cabin for an exit. The figure moved closer, stepping into the dim light of the cabin. "I need everyone to cooperate," he said, his gaze locking onto theirs. "This train is being diverted." The tension sharpened in the air, and slowly he felt her grip tighten on his hand, a tiny gesture that ignited a fire of determination within him. "We'll figure this out," he reassured her, a mix of courage and panic battling for dominance inside. Suddenly the lights flickered again, shadows dancing ominously along the walls. The passengers exchanged worried glances, uncertainty filling the space. Life outside seemed to disappear, swallowed by an abyss of confusion. It was now or never. He glanced at her, the strength in her eyes igniting the resolve within him. "We need to find a way off this train," he said, feeling the urgency push them both into action. "Yes," she replied, determination pouring through her voice. They slipped quietly from their seats, hearts pounding as they moved toward the doorway. The figure was distracted, addressing another passenger. This was their moment. They crept toward the exit, fueled by adrenaline and the promise of escape. The uncertainty outside waited like a shadow, pulling at their instincts. What lay ahead, what dangers awaited. But as they took that leap from the train, they understood. Sometimes the greatest risks led to the most profound transformations. Stepping onto the platform, they braced against the chill in the air, the taste of adventure mixing with fear. The night was dark, the world unknown, but as they turned to face each other, they knew this was the moment that would define them. And in that heartbeat, he wondered what awaited them in the darkness, the familiar path behind them fading away, replaced by a future full of unknowns. Together, they stepped forward, ready to embrace the journey that lay ahead, no matter how uncertain it may be.